Hi, in this demo video, we'll be setting up an evaluation of the Centrify Server Suite, and specifically we'll be doing the initial install configuration. In a previous video, I already talked about what you had to do before the software is installed, setting up the containers in ADUCT and things like that. Please refer to that video for those details. In this video, we're going to be assuming you've already watched that video and already set up the containers we need in ADUCT, the Centrify OU. Here, what we're going to be doing is setting up for a Centrify Server Suite evaluation, or CSS. We sometimes call it Centrify Server Suite CSS. So setting up the evaluation, we got to install the CSS standard enterprise software. We're going to configure and set up Centrify Zones. We'll talk about what zones are, and then we're going to configure test users. Inside the zones, we'll have things set up for a test Windows machine, a test Mac, and a test Unix machine. And then we'll have a test user, and we're all ready to go for when we install the actual agents on the endpoints. So what I'm going to do is continue off from the last video. We've already set up inside of Active Directory a Centrify OU. And I've made 3 containers, a zones, a licenses, and a direct audit. So I'm going to install inside of here. When again, there is no Centrify server. We use Active Directory as a back end. We need an OU to store all of our data in. That's what that Centrify OU is for. I download the software here. So here it is, the zip version. You could have downloaded the standard edition. This is actually the enterprise edition. The enterprise edition adds in auditing. So what we'll be doing is, even though we're installing the standard edition, I can go ahead and run the auto install from there. I just don't install the auditing piece. I'm not going to do that right now. First, I need to extract it. And through the magic of video editing, we'll jump to 100%. Okay, all done now. So now I have a folder where everything was extracted to. And inside of here, I should have the auto run. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run the auto run. So all we really got to do is click on Access. If you're running the standard edition instead of the enterprise edition with auditing, this audit option will not show up. But either way, we're just going to install the standard edition. All I got to do is click on Access. It's actually going to install the licensing service for us. The licensing service is new in CSS 2017. But once I click on Access, I have an option to install everything. Here's an important thing, Microsoft SQL Server Compact 3.5, basically a mini database. Our entire Centrify GUI is basically an MMC admin. All the data is stored inside of Active Directory. However, we need temporary database for when we import the sudoers file, and also inside the deployment manager, we need a place to store credentials if you're going to be doing the deployment manager. The sudo import is also great if you're going to import sudoers, and then we can manipulate them, get them ready to be used inside the DZ-do, or privilege management. So this is optional, however, you won't be able to import sudoers or do deployment manager. So we're going to go ahead and click yes for now. You want to at least have one console with this on. Some other consoles for other administrators who might not be the initial setup person, they might never need to do sudoers, so we can say no at that point. I'm going to go ahead and say yes for now because I want all this capabilities. Basic installation, front page, hit next. Read the licensing if you want. Agree to them, hit next. Basic stuff here. Can't spell my own company's name. So here comes the options. What we want to do is keep the top choice. We want everything installed. Go ahead and keep the NIST maps even if you don't need it. It's not going to hurt if you unclick that. We want everything in here. ADUCT property extensions. That's Active Directory users and computers. So you see a special, we do an extension to ADUCT only on this machine, so Centrify stuff shows up in ADUCT. And we'll show you what that means. That's a nice thing to have, at least on one computer. The group policy extensions. Again, Centrify has group policies. There's specific templates, XML and ADMX, that you load into Microsoft Group Policy Editor or another policy editor like NetIQ or something like that. So we need those extensions to install. We want the access module for PowerShell. That's a great thing to have. Inside utilities, go ahead and keep what's default, but then add in Centrify Zone Provisioning Agent. We don't need the password synchronization extension. The ZPA, the Centrify Zone Provisioning Agent, is also called ZPA. We want to go ahead and install that. We're not going to configure it, or we can keep it not running, but we need to install it right now. That's fine. We want the Centrify PuTTY. Again, optional. You can use anyone's version of PuTTY, but go ahead and install that. We want the licensing service. That is going to be a requirement going forward, so let's go ahead and install that. For right now, click the Centrify report services to turn that off. There's no reason to install that now. It's a little bit more advanced, and we'll do that in another video. There's some basic reports that come in the console itself, and this is for more extensive reporting we can do with a SQL Server, so we're going to install that another time. So again, for the most part, everything is checked except for password synchronization extension and report services. Where do I want to install this? Pretty much not going to take a long time. It's going to go through all this, and then you'll see the GUI pop up on the left. There it is there, Access Manager, and there will be a wizard that comes up with that. So we do not need to start the ZPA. We're going to unclick that. It's going to warn us, but that's okay. We just want to install for another time. And that's it. The rest is going to pop up when the Access Manager, when we run that. So I can go ahead and get out of this. Again, we need the license keys. I have my license keys right here. You should have permanent license keys, or if an evaluation is probably a temporary license key. Get that from your SE. So then when I click on Access Manager, it's going to go through a wizard, initial setup wizard. Hit next. The credentials I'm logged in as, I have somebody with domain admin rights. The person you're logged in as might just be a Centrify admin. That's okay. At least you have an admin of the Centrify OU. Again, that's absolutely required that whoever's a Centrify admin have full rights from that Centrify OU. There's a couple other things here that require a little more advanced rights, and we'll see that as we go through there. We don't need to deploy the recommended deployment structure here. Basically, it's a PowerShell script that'll deploy and create some additional containers and things like that under Centrify OU. This is what professional services does, and we can do a lot of that when we do a production deployment. Right now, we're just keeping it simple. We already created our container, so we do not need to click that. So we can keep that unchecked. Hit next. So this is saying, hey, where do you want to put the licenses keys? Where's our license container? We want to browse what we made earlier, the Centrify licenses. Click next. It's saying everyone's going to be granted read access. That's pretty much the default in AD, so that's fine. We can go back and change that later if we want to. Here's a license key. I'm going to hit paste and then add that in there. What's my default zone container? Again, no Centrify server. We put everything in Active Directory. We need a place to put our data. That's under some Centrify OU. Then under there, where are we putting all the zones? Which pretty much all of our data goes under zones. So again, the Centrify OU, we're putting, there's our zones we made for under that, and that's where we're going to put all of our data. So that's where we want our default zone container to be. At any time when I make a new zone inside the Centrify GUI, I can tell it to go anywhere, but by default, this is the location we're going to use. This is pretty good to grant the computer accounts in the computer container permission to update their own account information. You want to do that. This is so you don't have, basically in the integrity of the data, you don't have any zombie data later on. It requires some permissions. I have it with dworth that I'm logged in as. If you have that permission, you want to go ahead and check it. If it gives you an error, go and uncheck it. It's not going to hurt anything. It's a matter of people start deleting things, and we want to make sure that you don't get any zombie data, so you're going to have to run this analyze command every now and then. Again, this is those the Centrify property pages to show up inside of ADuct. I want that to happen, so I'm clicking next. Here's a recap of everything we're going to be doing. And that's it. This is an MMC snapping. The Centrify GUI is an MMC snapping, and we connect into a domain controller, and we put data there, read data from there, just like ADuct or group policy. This is showing you actually which domain controller you're connected to. It finds the closest one. If you wanted to change to a specific one, you can go there and you can type it in, either a different ID and password, or maybe it's DC, maybe you have a DC2 or something like that. I don't. I only have one domain controller in my little lab here. So what we're going to do is, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create some zones. So a zone is just a logical grouping of users and computers that share a security policy. In Centrify, we put all of our policies inside of a zones, and they're hierarchical in nature. This allows us to go outside the OU. OUs can be more restrictive. If we put all of our policies into an OU, then all the computers in OU have to have the same policy. We want to have more flexibility than that, and that's why we made this concept called zones. So we're going to create a new zone. Our zones are hierarchical in nature. The children inherit from their parents, so I want to make a top zone called global. I always make a global zone. That way I can define things globally. If you're familiar with programming, local variables and global variables, same kind of concept. We can define things globally and everything else will inherit them. So notice the container. This is my default container we picked earlier. We want the default zone type. And again, I'm calling it global. I'm fine using it as a container. Just hit next and then finish. So now I have a global container, global zones here. And then I'm going to make a child zone. You right click on global, create child zone. So in my environment here, I'm going to make three different child zones because I have 3 different test agents. I'm going to test Linux, I'm going to test Windows, and I'm going to test Mac. So I'm going to make a Linux zone. Again, notice where I'm already at. And now I have a child zone called Linux. I'm going to right click there and say create child zone. Mac. Right click. Again, that's what I'm doing. I'm right clicking on child zone, create child zone. Windows. Again, notice the container or the location where I'm putting it. So global zone, children's zone. I can right click on any zone. I get a bunch of different options, properties, a bunch of things I can go into there. We'll go into details on some of these later. So inside of here, child zone, I have a Linux, I have a Mac, and I have a Windows. So one thing you notice is inside of every one of these zones, it looks the same. Global zone and 3 different child zones, but they all have computers, Unix data, and authorization in each one of these. This could be represent one big, again, this is all Active Directory. This could be one big Active Directory with 3 different fiefdoms, and they all want their own little worlds. So I can have definitions of everything under authorization. We have role definitions, computer roles, Windows definitions. These can repeat for every child zone. Because they could be 3 different fiefdoms, 3 different companies, 3 different organizations. Or I'm having one big organization. These are the 3 separatized divisions. But we're going to all share the global. So I'd like to define everything globally, and then I assign my profiles and then assign my policies at a child zone. So again, children inherit from their parents. So I can define things globally, and the children are going to inherit from them, and then I can make overrides where I need. First thing I want to do, because some of my environment here is going to be for Unix computers, I'm going to have to create what we're called is Unix data. When you log into a centrified Unix machine, you're logging in with your AD account. Well, what is going to be your UID? What is going to be your home directory, your group ID, those kind of things? We're not actually putting all that information on the actual endpoint. We're not in Etsy Password or Etsy Shadow. It's not doing any kind of syncing up. You're logging in with your AD credentials. Centrify is allowing the ability for an AD account to log into these Unix machines, but what profile do they have? Well, we're going to create it. We're going to decide what that profile is. And if I create one profile globally, no matter how many child zones, they're all going to inherit that profile. So inside of here, what I can do is I can either right-click on the word users, or I right-click inside this blank space on the right, and I'm clicking Add User to Zone. So up here, I have these options in here, but I'm already in the right domain. I'm fine, and I'm going to search for my sample user. Later on, we're going to add groups and things like that, but right now we're doing Unix data. I got to build this individually for users. So and there are ways we can bulk load this in, and we can do ways of automating this, but we're going to add one test user manually. I'm not adding this person to AD. I'm finding them in AD, and I'm building a profile off of them. This is saying, hey, this Diana Worth is an enterprise admin. Is that okay? Yes. So notice it got all this information, and inside of here, I have some drop-down choices. This is the login name, UID, primary group, the description, their home directory, and shell. I can go ahead and click OK, but what am I picking for the UID? Well, we want something unique. I could type anything in here I want. If you guys have, in any one environment, already have a standard UID, I can make it whatever I want. I can make it anything I want, just type it in there, or Centrify can make a generated one, okay? This is generated from the SID. The SID is unique inside of Active Directory, so I can generate that. But before I do that, let's show you something. Some people already have a common one inside of Active Directory. It's RFC 2307. If I go to where I have Diana Worth, if I go into Attribute Editor, UID number. Now some people store this. If you have that, we can also grab from that. So if my Diana Worth happens to have a UID already clicked in here, so if they already have one, this could be something a lot of different organizations are starting to do that. Put the UID number inside their AD profile, and that's their standard UID number everywhere. So now Diana Worth has that. So that's one thing we could also do inside of here. Notice RFC 2307 showed up. Before it didn't because the person didn't have one. So I can make that the UID if that's something you guys have. So again, these are options here. We're making this profile. Every Unix machine I log in, when this AD account person logs in, what is the UID they have? What is the home directory? Those kind of things. And that's what I'm setting here. So I can use that RFC 2307 attribute if I want. Click OK. So now this person has a profile. I also have to build a profile for every other user. Again, we got to know what is the UID, what is the home directories, things like that. Now there are ways to bulk load in. We can bulk load a big batch file. We can write PowerShell scripts. There's all kinds of ways of getting this because in the end, this data is just sitting inside of Active Directory. That's what Centrify is. It puts data inside of Active Directory, inside of an OU, but that data gets distributed from domain controller to domain controller, and the agents pick it up. So one of the things we got to know is what is the UID, what is the GID, what is the home directory, so when this person logs in. I only have one sample user now, so I have that part. I have this user's profile. Now I got to give them the right to log in. And we have that under authorization. We have role definitions. Out of the box, we already have a definition called Unix login. That's the standard definition of a role, and that role will allow the Unix people to log in. If you look under roles, or look under authorization, we have role definitions, and then we have rights. Basically, with Centrify, we have rights. You put rights together into roles, and then you assign a role to a user or to an AD group. So if I look under Unix rights, I have PAM access. The login all gives you just that, the login all right. You might want to have just specific rights to do a certain SSH. Under commands, this is basically where we're going to add in new commands. This is basically our sudo-like replacement. So we can add in things. Centrify has a sudo replacement called dzdo. We're going to go over that in another video. The basic things, though, here is in our role definition, the Unix login role has this login all PAM right. So we have rights. We put rights together into roles. Roles are going to be assigned to users or AD groups, but we already have a role we can use called Unix login, and that's what I'm going to use. Now, again, that Unix login is under global. It also exists under every child zone, because again, these could be individuals, organizations. So it gets a little confusing, but you just got to remember that when we look at these different rights and roles, it looks the same under every zone. So that's okay. We're going to pick the Unix login. We don't want to pick it under a child zone. We're going to pick the one from the global zone. It really wouldn't matter. But again, this child zone could be its own fiefdom, and maybe they want to define their rights and roles different than everyone else. In my organization, we're all going to share, so I'm going to do everything out of the global zone. I'm going to use this role definition of Unix login from the global zone. But I don't want to assign it. I can do the role assignment here globally, but that'll give someone the right to log in globally to every child zone and every computer ever. That might be too much of a right. So I want to give this person, Diana Worth, the right to log in just to the Linux machines. So I can go into authorization, go to my child zone Linux, go to my authorization, right-click in here, say assign role. And again, we want that Unix login role, and we want the one from global. Just in case someone ends up changing it into child zones, I like to use the one from global. Click OK. Add AD account. I'm going to do the user. Later on, we can add an entire AD group, maybe called Unix users or something. But right now, I'm just doing one test user. Diana Worth. Click OK. So Diana Worth now has the login role I assigned at the child zone, but up globally, I assigned a profile. So this will be inherited. So she's pretty much all set up for Linux. Now, how do I test that? Well, Centrify has a great way of doing it. If you right-click on any zone, there's a Show Effective Unix User Rights. This is pretty much what is my policy. It's asking Centrify, what are the user rights right now? And I can see Diana Worth, all this information down here, the zone profile. I can click on different tabs. She was given this role assignment. Where is she given to? At the Linux child zone. Her PAM access is login all. I haven't added any commands or anything specific. So if these person shows up, whoever shows up here, they're ready to go. If I right-click on Mac and say Show Effective Unix User Rights, no one's there yet because Diana Worth has a profile but does not have authorization yet. So let's do that for the Mac. We consider basically Macs another type of Unix machine, so I'm going to do a role assignment there. Right-click inside of here. Again, I can right-click on role assignments or right-click in the white space. Choose Assign Role. I'm going to get the Unix login role for Mac. Unix login role from the global zone. And add in my test user that I have picked out. And now if I say show effective users, Unix users, she should show up as well. Now Windows machines, we don't have to make a Unix profile, but we still have to give the authorization, the right to log in. So if I go to role assignment here, I'm going to say assign role. Again, I right clicked, assign role. I'm going to do the Windows login. This one right here, I want the global one. Click OK. Add account. Click OK. And then again, click OK. So if I say show effective, again, I'm right-clicking on Windows. Say show effective Windows rights. Now look, Diana Worth has the right to log in. So on the Windows side, we are basically taking over the control of who can log in at that console level. So if you don't give someone the right to log in, with all of Centrify, when we're putting our agent on there, controlling who can log in, it's deny unless explicitly allowed. And with this zone information, this zone, we're explicitly saying Diana Worth can log in, but no one else can. So in Eval, in the beginning, what I like to do is let's go into role assignments and let's give the entire domain admins the right to log in, just so in case we don't mess ourselves up later on. So let's give the Windows login role globally, from the global zone, add AD account. I'm going to pick a group, pick domain, and I'm doing domain admins. So that allows all domain admins the right to log into all the Windows machine. Maybe later on I take that out. Not a bad thing to keep in there. I'm sure domain admins, you want to log into all the Windows machines. But you'll notice here if I go to show effective Windows user rights, I have another subgroup. This DBA is also domain admin, and then Diana Worth, and then all my administrators. So again, what I've done is I've set up all my policies. I've set up my global zone and my children's zone. Children inherit. Inside these children, I didn't have to put anything in Unix data because it's inheriting from the global. But then I made the authorization assignment. At the role assignment, I'm giving them the Unix login role. I'm giving the Unix login role at that particular child zone level. If I would have done it globally, they could have logged in everywhere, but that might be too much rights. Somebody might not have the right to log into a zone you're going to add 3 months from now. It might be a top secret zone, and you added someone globally, they're not supposed to have that right. You're going to run into problems there. So define things globally and then assign at the child zone level is a pretty good rule of thumb. But I've made all my definitions. I can right-click in any one here, and I can look at the user rights. I'm all ready to go for my test user. Diana Worth is set up in Linux, Mac, and Windows, and she's all good to go. So the basic idea, we're setting up these policies, putting them into AD, everything's ready to go for Diana Worth. Now when I install my test agents, they're going to join Active Directory, and they're going to join a specific zone, and they'll download all their policies, and one of their policies will say, hey, Diana Worth can log into this Linux machine. So that way, when we do our test user, everything's going to be good. So that ends this video. Please see the next videos for installing an agent. Thank you.